All right, let's start. Thanks everyone for showing up. We just came out of a one-day workshop, the two front rows here, and myself and Mariusz, and we're going to tell you a little bit about what we did today in the think tank and what the outcomes were. Before I do that, just a quick introduction. I'm Kerstin, I work for Google. I've been working for Google for almost 8 years. I usually work with news publishers, so this is quite different from what I do in my day-to-day. And I have been facilitating sessions like the one I did today for about 3 years now. And the person who brought me here is Mariusz. Do you want to quickly...
You know me from Beehype, like the crazy global website with local music, but I also work with the weekly magazine Polityka, and in this weekly magazine we had a workshop with Kerstin 2 years ago, and it was so excellent that when we started to brainstorm about some brainstorm at MENT, somewhere at base Vienna at midnight with beer, they want to make something interesting, and it sounded like they need Kerstin, so you should microphone. Yeah.
So what we did today is a workshop format called Creative Skills for Innovation. It's something that we use at Google. It's based on design thinking. Who here is familiar with design thinking? Excellent.
We are.
Wow. From the beginning.
I'm going to explain the process briefly, but also just before that, a couple of definitions of what that is. A culture that fosters exploration, expansive thinking, and experimentation. A process that can be taught and learned that strengthens creative confidence. So creativity is actually a muscle that you can train, and the more often you use it, the easier it gets to touch into that creativity and your own creative skills. And it's a human-centered approach with a bias towards action and a culture of iteration and rapid prototyping. So especially the iteration part, I do hope that the groups will continue with the ideas that they have created today, because it's only the start of something bigger, hopefully. For me, design thinking is a lot about challenging your own assumptions. It's about challenging what you think you know about users. It's about challenging what you think is possible when it comes to ideation. And it's about challenging what you think will work at the end with a user when it comes to a product or process or event or any idea. So it's really about consistently challenging what you think is true. So the process that the groups went through today is this one. It's around 3 key principles. So we have user focus, we have 10x thinking, and we have prototyping. The user focus was the first part of the day, where these people here actually did user research, quantitative research that we provided. They did user interviews, they set up a research plan. That was pretty much the first 1.5 hours, 2 hours. And it's not about, in this part, it's not about coming up with solutions. It's really focusing on understanding the user and their challenges. And we had different users for this challenge. So, I'm not sure, is this still working? I'm going to explain which users we had in a little bit, but just keep that in mind. And then they moved into a brainstorming phase where they really tried to think big and to have a healthy disregard for what they thought was possible. Then they went into a prototyping. So in the prototyping phase, it's not just you build something nice for the user to look at. It was really about figuring out what the the assumptions were that you had, and how you can figure out whether your assumption is true or wrong. So it's about figuring out, does the user want this? Do they need this? Does it address their challenge? So over and over again, putting yourself in that situation where you have to question yourself and get in touch with the user. And that was then the last bit also with the testing, where the users came back and we tested. Just in terms of what this meant in numbers. So we had 12 people today, 2 facilitators. We had 6 hours, we had roughly 8 user interviews, we had pre-festival survey responses, we had a lot of ideas, and we had 4 prototypes in the end, and now we have 12 people here who are going to talk about what they learned today, because at the end of the day, Mariusz and I were not the most important people in the room, dare I say it, but the participants actually came up with all the ideas and really fueled the process. So we had these groups, and they focused on different users: artist managers, booking agents, festival bookers and promoters, and ex-U music professionals. So at the end of the day, a lot of the challenges overlap, and I think a lot of the solutions you came up with could be applicable to different user groups. But this is something to keep in mind when we are looking at this. And without further ado, I would like to ask group 1.
I noticed that no one else is coming up from my group. Ingrid, Barbora, come on, prepare to be embarrassed by me. We're group 1. Thank you. So which way do I move it on? Oh, look, it's got a little red pointer, which is very nice. This way. So this is me. In case you didn't know, now we had a picture of all 3 of us, but when we resized it, the ladies decided their bottoms looked too big, so we had to go with a picture of just me. So so we came up with Get Personalised. We felt that we needed to, how might we deliver personal access to business partners for artist managers during local showcase festivals, meaning local but global at the same time. And this is roughly what we felt was needed after our interviews with the managers that came in to speak to us. We did our interviews separately, so I did one and the girls did one, and actually from those interviews there were quite a lot of things that married up even though we were doing the interviews separately. So from that we came up with a registration process, and then there would be, within that registration process there would be, by MENT, there would be curated meetings. So if you're looking for a specific thing, you would say that in your registration, and then you would be matched up with people, other professionals that you could have a discussion with, meet with, because you were looking for similar things. Enhanced database with custom filters, so you search by, maybe it would be, you could search by name. Probably not that useful, but you could search by territory or promoter, etc., etc. You would then be able to communicate with the person that you found that you want to talk to, but you would communicate in a set form. So all the information would be in one message rather than sending a message saying, "Hi, I'd like to meet you at MENT," or "I'd like to meet you at Tallinn." You would actually give all the information, what you were looking for, what you were presenting, what you need to discuss, etc., etc. So then it's very targeted and it saves a lot of time for everybody. And then you could use the database beforehand, during, and after the conference as well. So even after 6 months after, you could still use this database to communicate with people that you met. And if, for instance, someone communicated me and they were talking to me about something that wasn't relevant to me, I, as a professional in the database, would be able to then recommend a person that you think, actually, this is more relevant to this person, and you could send that recommendation on within the database. We thought that it would be a good idea to do territory workshops, not like a party where you go and drink Polish vodka and get drunk and just talk about stuff, but actually real things within the workshop. So you would get a market overview, a live overview. It would all be presented by professionals from the territory and from those actual functions from the territory. They would present success stories, so that within the territory, so that maybe if you have an artist or you're doing something that you want to do in Poland, you could see whether it worked or there was something else that's working within that territory at the moment. And we would give a make-up of the market based on genre, whether hip-hop is big, whether rock is big, etc., etc. And they would end, that session then would end with speed meeting. So you have a relevance. Normally you do a speed meeting and there's not really a lot of relevance beforehand. You would have been in a workshop, you would have learned about the market, and then you would have had something from learning about the market to talk about in your speed meetings. And then we thought that both our managers said one of the problems was when they left the showcase and the showcase had finished, they had, maybe they went back to their normal jobs, it was day to day, you don't have a lot of time then to chase up the people that you'd met. So we thought that it would be good to set up an after showcase communication group, whether it be on WhatsApp or Slack or something like that. You could then continue to communicate with the people that you discuss things with, or even if people you hadn't met and you missed them, you could still contact them. So you could use the database, or you could use if you'd already met them, you could use the group communication that we set up. And from that, there would then be a mentor program, but it wouldn't be facilitated by a person within the communication group just going to someone and saying, will you be my mentor? It would be facilitated by the festival, by the showcase organisers. And that is the end of our presentation.
Group 2 coming up.
So we did interviews with 2 booking agents who also have different hats and are also managers and do a festival. One of them was a more experienced one, and another one was a very unexperienced guy with showcases and festivals. So we had inputs from really 2 extremes in a way, and but we found some overlapping things which might not be like super new information, but the point was to actually validate the assumptions, challenge whatever we think or take for granted. So basically both of them said that one of the most important reasons for them to come to a showcase was to find new connections, but not just randomly, but somehow through an old friend or someone they know already. So it would be sort of like a guided introduction or something like that. So they just don't, because they take it for somehow granted that the person who wanted to introduce them to each other knows why they should speak with each other, and this worked a lot of cases well, in our cases too. We also found that the user tends to go to festivals and conferences with many familiar faces. So for example, big ones like Eurosonic or Vomex or Midam, things like that, might also fall on the radar of a lot of people because that's very more business-wise and they can do more business perhaps. But in smaller ones, they crave for the intimacy and the familiarity of the festival, and they prefer that. Yeah, and the settings, from all of them, the input was the speed meetings are way too formal and way too facilitated, and it's really hard to actually take any value out of them sometimes, in a lot of cases. So doing something in a more casual and unfacilitated way is a much better and meaningful experience for everyone. Yeah, and diversity was another important takeaway, that they find that on the panels usually the panelists are not selected well, not curated well. Sometimes they're just thrown in because they know that person is important for some other reason, so they put that person in a panel, and basically it's not going to make a more interesting panel discussion, but sort of like a tick that has to be done in a way. So seeing more diversity in terms of gender, age, race, whatever you call it, so would be much better for everyone. And surprisingly, none of our users who we interviewed was here for the music mainly, but for the connections. So going to concerts and to gigs was a secondary part for everyone actually in our group. And now I will pass on to Elif.
So we ended up with the prototype that is called Meet My Friend Walk. We try to answer the need of people wanting to meet the new people through their existing connections in a setting that is casual and it feels like unfacilitated, so it's very easygoing. And we also we base this on our own experiences, and we realize that when we have a common activity together, and when we meet through the people that we already know, we tend to form more meaningful and more longer lasting connections. So we focused on that in our prototype, and we wanted to organize this event that is guided like a guided walk through the city, and we wanted to emphasize the people who join us to be mindful about introducing rather than mindful about meeting new people. And that's how we thought that it would be really it would be really, like, the result would be more serving for the purpose of the event. But while we're doing it, we actually thought that we would still have certain people that are entirely dedicated to study the people that are coming there and trying to understand who they would like to meet and what they would like to do, and then make sure that during the event the connections would actually happen. But we didn't want to advertise this too much because people focus so much on the fact that their connections were so much better when it was more surprising and unexpected and unfacilitated.
Yeah, exactly. And we have, can you?
Oh yeah, sure.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. We have 3 things that we came up as like further recommendations, which is the first thing that we didn't tackle in our prototype, sadly, was the diversity factor, but this is something I guess everyone who deals with conferences and creating a conference festival should keep in mind always, because we don't always want to see the same faces and the same people on panels, but we need diversity, and we need all kinds of diversity, which is not only gender, but anything. And any like new angle we have is valuable. And then a thing that applies to all boutique festivals, like keep it small, don't try to expand, keep it small and accessible, familiar, like our users, they focused a lot on meeting their family again on the festivals. And facilitate, but don't over-facilitate, right? As easy as it gets. And I guess our prototype was like one example of how to do that, how to set like a frame, but a frame in which everyone can be themselves and meet the people they want to meet, but also meet new people they didn't expect to meet.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. You're first, yeah? Yeah.
So we group 3. By now you probably realized that we share many ideas, and some things we come up with are somewhat similar. Would you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Thank you. So we started out with the question, how might we create an interesting personal experience with a strong connection to the local scene for professionals who are fed up with too many boring conferences and showcases? With that question, we tried to sum up the actual problem, and in the process to getting there, we figured that many of the things we discussed are very much about size, so conferences might be too big, and the other thing, regionality. So lots of the feedback that we got, especially from the users and the personal interviews, was that it's ultimately comes down to the connections that you get out of these festivals, and that people enjoy most, that these contacts are local, that they know about the market, and that the connection is strong and meaningful long-term, best case. And what we came up with, the solution, is this incredible poster.
This is our ad, by the way, our prototype for our
Our
ad.
prototype ad, make music conferences great again. We used your quote. And the idea we had was a program called MENT Boost. I want you for the MENT Boost. And we built a bracket starting with apply, select, connect. It's somewhat similar to what you've seen in group 1, I must admit, but we didn't talk to each other during the process, unfortunately. And the other side of the bracket would be the term you can switch to the next level then, which you can find on the teach, discuss, in between, how we got there. That's up to you now.
So, as Hannah said, our kind of plan here is to apply, select, and connect more professional delegates. Our target group is delegates overall, professionals. By apply, we in the apply plan, part of the plan, we would ask people that would like to attend MENT to fill out a survey, quite a detailed survey. We would ask them as well to suggest topics that they would want to learn, but as well that they would be willing to share on. And what we found to be essential was that people also describe their needs, what they need to get out of an event. The select part of the plan is that we would have a jury that selects the MENT Boost group of delegates, and it's absolutely essential that this is a mixed group of both local and international delegates. The connect piece of the plan is that we would offer then, based on the surveys and the data that's provided to us, we would offer suggestions for matchmaking, and then we would have a conference that is based on a co-learning environment. The reason we came up with this plan are some of the things that we received from our user, some of the, quotes and some of the information that we received from our users. We wanted to share a few of them with you because actually they were some of them were quite surprising. One of them is a BAM quote, "A conference isn't a reason to attend, but more of an excuse to stimulate networking." The next piece that was really important was that people need to have a connection to the local scene and to the local context. That's absolutely essential. Next was that we heard from someone as well a quote, "I want to meet people I can have a business relationship with and make future connections." People don't want something that's too overwhelming, and they actually would like to be able to attend things. Too many things is quality over quantity, rather, in this situation. We heard as well that repeated topics are often boring, that there's the same topics at most festivals and at most conferences, and we're sick of that shit. And the other thing is that people would like to hear a little bit more specific and in-depth topics.
So then we had an interview with our users to see if our ideas are viable, and we got some really good feedbacks actually. First is that this system would give a voice to potential delegates to have their voice heard, what they are actually in need and what they want to actually learn. The other is to have a connection to local and international professionals, which is pro. We were speaking about some changes because there are actually, as we all know, some bookers or promoters, for instance, that are attending conferences, but they are never attending at panels. So how can we bypass this thing? Is that to maybe create kind of a pass that allows everyone to go to networking events and the showcase part, but doesn't have to attend at the panels, so it's kind of a different ticketing. And the other is ideas of having like a kind of MENT Boost ambassador system in which we could include youth, young professionals, because we see that the scene is getting older We can see it on ourselves maybe. Somewhere.
Feel it getting older.
Yeah, I feel it. So that also means that have like different sort of ambassadors. One youth, like young professionals, but also have local and international professionals that would actually bring the people to make it much more interesting to attend. Then the mechanism to share stories. So we are speaking about the community. So it's not just about topics, but also about experiences and inspirations. And we have the two questions. One, well, we looked at the cons as well. So one is how to motivate the professionals to engage, and the other is the usual question is that who's the jury? So if there's a jury who's selecting professionals, who would be the jury? So these are like points to work on, and basically that was it.
Yeah, that's our prototype. Okay.
Hi, so we are the group 4. My name is Paula, and Marko and Peter. Our user group is ex-Yugoslavian music professionals. I'm from Slovakia, which is not ex-Yugoslavian. That's why I'm speaking on behalf, because I have the distance from the cause. So this is our while working. So the question was, because we had like 2 interviews with the music professionals that have like a long history and a lot of experience with the Balkan industry, ex-Yugoslavian countries, and we were asking like how might we make the ex-Yugoslavian music professionals more educated in the business part of music business, because what they basically said was like, everyone wants to do music, but it's not a real business industry. Like they struggle a lot to make money out of it, and it's not that professional as it seems. So what we learned from those 2 interviews, as I said, like the professionals in those countries are not really that good in the business side. The big struggle is that there is real poor knowledge about the younger audience, what they listen to, what they want to hear, when they want to spend their money, so they actually don't care that much about this like independent music scene, and that they go more to the pop culture and commercial music scene. So the business is lost. And about the conference agenda, the problem is that yes, there are panels dedicated to the Balkan countries, like in that conference and that conference, but basically it's the same blah blah blah. And there is no continuity whatsoever. That's what the interviews said. So they would like to maybe have some more concept about the topics, about their music industry, and so on. And as also they said, there is not much real collaboration between these countries. There are no associations, and they think because they have the same background, there should be something for this. So our prototype is like a short sketch about a platform, that this is like a work title. It's called XU Music Hub. This is the logo. So basically we have 4 conferences, the Showcase Festival in the area. It's MENT in Slovenia, PIN in Skopje, and Kontakt and Indirect it's in Belgrade. So it would be really good if all these conferences have panels dedicated to this kind of in like a Balkan side industry and agenda, like more like one agenda. So the topics will be like in a continuity. So every year on every festival, maybe there will be some results from the previous year. The speakers will become connected, etc. This platform will work like whole year as kind of an association, which will offer to the music professionals from Balkans like business models, which are not based in like a global know-how, but more like based on the regional experience and case studies. Also, the platform will serve as an educational online digital platform with like workshops and panels recorded, contexts, like serve for networking, and like as an online community. As we also mentioned before, like the youth, young people are important, so all the panels and all the association or the platform should invite also like young people who are interested to be music professionals or like listen to music, or even they could educate us older people about what they like, what they want to listen to. As we said, there was an online platform, but online platforms could be boring. So the work exchange, like in person, is very important. So this certain group of music professionals from Balkan countries could go to another Balkan countries or in different countries to go to work the festival for like 2 weeks, 3 weeks once, have like some kind of work exchange. And also very important what we think for the music business, it's to working with local governments. So some of the laws could be changed. Because what the interviews said, the problem is like sometimes you want to organize a festival, but the government doesn't have the know-how about what to do if you want to rent something, or the laws doesn't know nothing about it. So good would be to educate and somehow connect with the governments as well. Thank you.
Thank you all for presenting your ideas, and that's it from us. Thanks to the fantastic participants. This URL you find there. You find a little bit more about the process. There's also a template deck and a facilitator guide if any one of you wanted to run this. I'm just going to say if they want to know more about any of the ideas, they can reach out to you, can't they? Yeah. So find these people, find them and talk to them if you want to know more about the ideas. Thank you very much.
Thank you.